When you think of the Green Bay Packers and their legendary quarterbacks, a few names instantly come to mind. Bart Starr, the leader of Lombardi's Dynasty, the man who defined what it meant to be a Packer. Brett Favre, the Iron Man gunslinger who brought chaos, joy, and a Super Bowl back to Titletown. And Aaron Rodgers, a four-time MVP who made impossible throws look routine and carried the franchise for over a decade. Those are the names etched in history. But what almost never comes to mind is the quarterback that came before all of that. A name that even die-hard fans might not recognize today. The quarterback who lit the fuse for Green Bay's modern era and then disappeared almost overnight. His name was Don Majkowski. To understand Majkowski, you have to understand where the Packers were before him. The 1970s and 80s were not kind to Green Bay. After the Lombardi dynasty faded, the team spent nearly 2 decades in football purgatory. They cycled through coaches, quarterbacks, and heartbreak. Between 1973 and 1988, the Packers had just 2 winning seasons. They were still a publicly owned small market team in an NFL that was moving toward big cities and bigger money. To most of the league, the Packers were a relic, a once great team stuck in the past. And in 1987, with nothing left to lose, they took a shot on a late-round quarterback out of the University of Virginia. Don Majkowski was never supposed to be an NFL star. He wasn't a first-round pick. He wasn't a Heisman finalist. He was a 10th-round draft pick, number 255 overall, fighting for a roster spot. At Virginia, Majkowski had shown flashes of talent. A mobile, confident passer who could improvise when plays broke down. But the NFL wasn't built for improvisers yet. It was still the era of pocket passers, long play calls, and rigid systems. So when Majkowski arrived in Green Bay, expectations were low. He started as a backup, waiting for his chance behind a carousel of forgettable names. But even as a rookie, teammates noticed the confidence, the swagger that made him different. He wasn't intimidated by the league. He was just waiting for someone to hand him the ball. That chance finally came in 1989. The Packers were coming off a losing season, desperate for direction. Head coach Lindy Infante gave Majkowski the starting job, and what happened next stunned the NFL. In just his 3rd year, Majkowski exploded. He completed 353 passes for 4,318 yards and 27 touchdowns, leading the entire NFL in passing yards. That was a huge deal at the time. In 1989, only 2 other quarterbacks even broke 4,000 yards. And suddenly, this 10th-round pick was outdueling the biggest names in football. Green Bay went 10-6, their best record since 1972. The franchise that had been lost for nearly 2 decades finally had a pulse again. Majkowski wasn't just productive. He was exciting. He played with flair, confidence, and a little recklessness. He scrambled out of broken pockets, extended plays with his legs, and fired deep shots to Sterling Sharp, who became one of the NFL's most dominant receivers under him. The fans loved it. They gave him a nickname, the Majik Man. Because week after week, he made Lambeau Field feel alive again. He led 5 fourth-quarter comebacks that season, often by the slimmest of margins. The Packers earned the nickname the Cardiac Pack. They didn't blow teams out. They survived them. And Majkowski was the reason why. Every great story has a moment that defines it. For Don Majkowski, that moment came on November 5th, 1989, against the Chicago Bears. The Packers were down late, facing 4th and goal. Majkowski dropped back, rolled right, and found Sterling Sharp open in the end zone. Touchdown. except the refs said he'd crossed the line of scrimmage before throwing. Game over. Bears win. But then came the review. After minutes of tension, the referee turned to the camera and said, "After further review, the call on the field is reversed. Touchdown! Green Bay wins." That single moment, broadcast live to the nation, turned Majkowski into a folk hero. It wasn't just a win, it was a statement. The Packers were back. Statistically, Majkowski's 1989 season remains one of the most impressive by any Packers quarterback outside the Favre Rodgers era. 4,318 passing yards, first in the NFL, 27 touchdowns, 58.9% completion rate, strong for the era. Second in MVP voting, behind only Joe Montana. To understand how rare that was, only a handful of quarterbacks in history had ever led the league in passing yards as a Packer. He wasn't just good, he was legitimately elite for that season. Majkowski's improvisational style broke away from the slow, conservative offenses of the 80s. He made the Packers fun again. But football's magic can vanish as quickly as it appears. In 1990, Majkowski tore his rotator cuff. He missed half the season and never quite looked the same again. The fast release, the mobility, all dulled by injury. By 1991, he was fighting through pain. And by 1992, another devastating blow came. A torn ankle ligament early in the season. That injury opened the door for a backup quarterback named Favre. Favre came off the bench, threw a comeback touchdown, and never gave the job back. Just like that, Don Majkowski's time in Green Bay was over. Majkowski tried to keep his career alive. He spent time with the Indianapolis Colts, and later the Detroit Lions, mostly as a backup. In 1995, he even threw 3 touchdowns in a playoff appearance with Detroit, a brief flash of the old magic. But the injuries had taken their toll. He retired quietly in the mid-1990s, just as Favre was entering his prime and bringing the Packers back to the Super Bowl. It's one of football's cruel ironies. Majkowski helped save the franchise, and then watched another man take it to glory. So why is Don Majkowski forgotten today? Part of it is timing. He played in the narrow window between eras, after the glory days of Bart Starr and before the Favre-Rodgers dominance that would define the next 3 decades. He didn't win a championship. He didn't last long enough to break records. And the NFL, like history, moves on quickly from those who burn bright but short. But here's the thing. Without Majkowski, there might not be a Favre era. That 1989 season reignited a dormant franchise. It reconnected Green Bay to its fan base. It proved to ownership, coaches, and the entire league that the Packers could still matter. Majkowski laid the groundwork. Favre built the house. Rodgers decorated it. Majkowski's final numbers don't jump off the page. 12,700 career passing yards, 66 touchdowns, 67 interceptions. Career passer rating, 72.9 average by modern standards. But his story was never about numbers. It was about timing, resilience, and giving Green Bay hope again. In 2005, the Packers inducted him into their Hall of Fame, a nod to the man who bridged the gap between obscurity and the modern era of greatness. He wasn't Bart Starr, he wasn't Brett Favre, he wasn't Aaron Rodgers, but for one unforgettable season, he was the man. So, how good was Don Majkowski? Actually, for a brief moment, Don Majkowski was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Not a legend, not a dynasty maker, but for a team lost in mediocrity, he was everything they needed. He reminded Green Bay what it felt like to win again, what it felt like to believe. And though history tends to forget players like that, it shouldn't, because sometimes It's not the ones who win it all that save a franchise. It's the ones who make it worth saving in the first place. Don Majkowski, the Majik Man, the bridge between the darkness and the dawn.